Today on CCHF Talk.
We've been praying for providers. We've been praying for providers to go into the darkest, hardest places. But really, in the past 10 years, we've changed that prayer to say we need administrators. We need people, strategic, business-minded people to go into the hard places and teach us how to have sustainable, profitable, solvent systems that are still mission-focused.
CCHF Talk is produced by Christian Community Health Fellowship, where healthcare providers, executives, and students come together to educate, encourage, and engage. Join us as we explore topics related to healthcare to marginalized communities. Those talks, those conversations. CCHF Talk.
Welcome to this afternoon's session called Strategic Decisions Made Simple. Made simple. This is a framework to guide your team towards a brighter future. My name is Larry Rector. I serve as the CFO/COO at Dayspring Health. And with me today is Dr. Geogy Thomas. He is the CEO/CMO at Dayspring Health. And before we get into the content, I would like to know a little bit about who's in the room. So how many executive directors or CEOs? Okay.
You gotta be kidding me.
They already know how to make decisions. They're not in here. How about CMOs or CFOs? Okay, a couple more. And then students. Two in the back. And then how about doctors, mid-levels, so on and so forth. Okay. Finance, one, HR, okay, cool, okay. Other roles, I'm sorry if I didn't name them. Yeah, we got some more hands, all right, very good. So, typically speakers will show a picture of their family, but I'm gonna show instead a picture of book recommendations, if you are a fan of books. So these are books that I really enjoyed in the last 18 months. And I'm just sharing if you're a fellow book reader. First one is The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. Anybody who's read that book? Life-changing. Yeah, I feel the same way about it. Life-changing. The idea that just rocked my world is the idea that hurry and love are incompatible. If you are in a world of hurry, love becomes very difficult. Atomic Habits, another book that really loved. We might have the same book list, it looks like. So I was somebody that every year I would make a bunch of goals and maybe reach half of them. And there was an idea of we do not rise to the level of our goals, we fall to the level of our systems. And thinking about the effect of what are the systems in my life that are leading towards what I'm trying to do? And then the other thing is this idea that every system is perfectly designed to get the results that it gets. Like me using my phone as my alarm in the morning was a great way to waste 20 minutes of my morning every day looking at social media. Great system for that. So I've eliminated that. The Midnight Library. This is a fictional book. I'll just say that it was really profound in the idea of appreciating your life, appreciating the journey that you're on. And then lastly, a book called Smart Brevity. It is purposefully short. I made everybody on my leadership team read this book because I was like, we are going to have shorter emails. We're going to have shorter meetings. We do not need 150,000 words to say what we could say in 20 words.
So shorter was the segue for me to step in. So thank you, Larry. So yeah, my favorite book from this year, or one of my favorite, is also The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. And I cannot tell you how important it is that every leader reads this, because I wish I had read this book 25 years ago when I started my journey at Dayspring. It's really just a call to slow down, but then also to simplify your living. One of the best chapters in there is all about Sabbath rest. And for us as Christians, to understand what that means for us to take that Sabbath and keep it holy. And it doesn't have to be legalistic. It doesn't have to be on Sunday. It doesn't have to be on Friday sundown or whatever. But it really is just to honor the Lord. And how we spend that seventh day really affects the other 6 days that we live. And so for us as leaders who can live out our faith, encourage you guys to read this. The other book I love this book, Upstream. How many people have read this? Oh my goodness. Let's stop and let's all read it together.
We're changing the session right now. No?
Okay, so let me get into it. This is like a sermon in a sermon, right? And so Upstream is one of my favorite books because, so here's the thing. Just imagine that you are fishing by the river and you're fishing and you see a little kid drowning. What do? We jump in and save that kid, right? We pull them out, we give them breath saving and get them saved, right? And then as we're finishing up and the kid's breathing okay, we hear another scream and there's another kid drowning in there. What do? We jump in and get that kid. And we keep doing this because why? We are in healthcare. That's what we were trained to do, right? That's our whole idea is we're about to save the rest of the world by coming in, jumping in and saving those kids that are dying. But at some point, we need to ask the question, why are these kids in the river in the first place? Who's pushing these kids over? What's going on in the system? And frankly, most of us clinicians are way too busy to jump in and save kids, but then also go upstream. And that's why we need to develop great friendships. We need to have great relationships with our administrators. So for the longest time, CCHF, we've been praying for providers. We've been praying for providers to go into the darkest, hardest places. But really, in the past 10 years, we've changed that prayer to say we need administrators. We need people, strategic, business-minded people to go into the hard places and teach us how to have sustainable, profitable, solvent systems that are still mission-focused. And if we can't do that, all is lost. But this is an amazing book, so please read the book, get it, talk about it with your team. The next is Smarter, Faster, Better. Great book, great examples of what it means to work smarter, faster, and better. And I understand the irony that we have ruthless elimination of hurry and the smarter, faster, better. Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
Which book did you read first?
Now, I will tell you, and I have to stop and make fun of my kids, so I spoke to my son a couple months ago, and I told my son he is a first-year vascular surgical resident, and I said, Jonathan, I think you really need to read this book that I'm reading. I love it. You should read this and whatever. And so about 5 days later, I went to visit him in New Jersey, and and I had forgotten that I told him to read the book. And I said, Jonathan, you should read this book. And he's like, oh, Dad, I read it. My girlfriend and I reread it together. I'm like, what? In 5 days? Really? He's like, yeah. Well, honestly, it was an audio book, and we read it on 3-speed. 3-speed.
That is smarter and faster.
I don't think you understand the irony that you read the ruthless elimination of hurry in 3-speed. I am really going to send John Mark Comer that anecdote to say this is the generation we are dealing with. But I'm sorry. Smarter, Faster, Better, really good book about processes and systems. And then the last one is The Radium Girls. And I know that sounds really weird to have up there. This is actually a true story of what happened with just the development of OSHA. And I hate OSHA. I hate OSHA standards. It's such a pain in the butt. But how that came in. I mean, really, The Radium Girls is equivalent to The Jungle, the book Jungle, from many years ago, talking about the market the food markets and the public health standards of the 1800s. But the Iranian girls are talking about some of the exposures and some of the stuff that went on behind the corporate greed. Amazing, sad stories. I love sad stories, but it helps inspire me to do the kind of work that we're doing, which is basically advocate, to stand up for the poor, stand up for people who are voiceless. And so, yeah, you're going to be very, very sad. Take your Prozac and read it. It's great. Okay. On that note.
On that note.
Tag, you're it.
Yeah, marketing 101. So let me tell a different story. And in all seriousness, we share those. If you have book recommendations, I would love to hear those. I'm sure Geogy would love to hear them. I have an Amazon list, and it just continues to grow, and I slowly work my way through it. All right. So once upon a time, getting back now to the content of this session, I want you to kind of join this kind of idea of a story of a clinic far, far away from here in the border of Tennessee and Kentucky called we're going to call it Wellspring Health, not Dayspring Health. And there's these two executives that have all these great ideas, and they're like, oh, we're going to do that, and we're going to do that, and we're going to do that. And I don't know if this sounds like anything that you've encountered. So the common strategic planning, at least that I've seen when talking to my cohort here when we are brainstorming and we get excited about ideas, or talking to other leaders, is this idea of identify a need. Our community absolutely has to have this. Or there's this patient group that needs this. Or, frankly, our team needs this. And then we envision a solution to the problem. Maybe we're at a whiteboard getting all excited about X, Y, Z and how we're going to solve that problem. And then we just get to work. But what's also happening is, what about the list that we already had? What about the other 20 tasks that we had in process, and then we're getting excited about this next thing, right? And I know that we all have that. And that night might not even be at work. It could be at home. This happens in my home all the time. So what we have come to find is this idea of a framework to say, hey, if we can check these boxes, then let's take it serious. Let's not just do every great idea that comes to mind, and that has helped us. Because without focus, our efforts lack needed resources for desired success. When I've got things already in process, and then I shift focus to something else, there's only so much of me, there's only so much of the team, there's only so much of each other, and so much money, et cetera, fill in the blank. You can't do everything. And the enemy that we face in these situations is distraction. Distraction is something that I'm convinced that we deal with so much more now than we've ever dealt with. Our ability to focus, there are so many stats out there about how poor we are doing as people now at focusing. I think I read a couple of years ago that our focus is worse than a goldfish. How are we that bad? I think the average person looks at their phone over 20 times a day. I can't even imagine, but maybe I do. I know I hold it a lot. So, your most treasured resource, and the things that everybody's fighting to get, is your focus. Like social media, it's easy to pick on social media. The commodity that they are fighting for is your focus. And when you think about decision making, what you're going to prioritize, when you don't have focus, your resources are scattered. And this is the difference between being focused and not focused. This power that's being spread out without being focused in on the point that you're doing, the energy is lost. So this framework that we would like to share with y'all, we call the 5 pillars. And we're going to work into each of them. So let's kind of circle back to this narrative and say a couple ideas that Wellspring Health kicked around. Pharmacy. I don't know if you've been in this industry long enough, you probably have pharmacy or you're thinking about pharmacy because there's a lot of discussion about how much it can contribute to the bottom line. It's a needed thing. We've had the same conversations, right? Should we do in-house? Should we do more contract pharmacy, et cetera, et cetera? We've had conversations about, and I have two examples here from dental. In our community, there's like 2.5 FTEs of dentists other than ours. So we said, there is absolutely a ton of need. As soon as we opened, our books, like all the appointment slots were booked out 6 months, within 3 weeks. So we thought, you know what, let's do late night and weekends. Surely that's a great idea. Invisalign, a lot of people want that. Maybe that's a good thing to do. Women's health, we had an idea to do Botox. Also the idea of doing physical therapy as a part of like integrated healthcare. So these are just some examples of things that we talked about, and we're going to walk them through the pillars. I hand it to you.
So just a little bit of background also. So here's the thing, I'm a physician, and through the years I've learned clinicians do great work. We are saving lives right and left and stuff like that, but we make horrible business decisions. We really do. We think with a different part of our brain, right? And so we really desperately need our business leaders to come alongside of us and help us with those business aspects of running a healthcare. Our business people are amazing, brilliant people, but they don't understand clinical. And so to have someone that comes in and is able to communicate those things together, or to have one person, is really hard. So to learn how to have some of these conversations with people is really, really important, because here's the thing, God has charged us with the business of healthcare, the business of healthcare. You've got to figure out a way of keeping those doors open, and that requires strategic thinking, strategically looking at these things wisely. Because here's the thing, is that if you give most of the people in this room a need, you're going to champion it, and you're going to do it, and you're going to do it even if there's no money in the bank. You're going to do it even if you don't have the people to do it, because we're just passionate people. We need other people on the team that help us think through, how are we doing these things? Why are we doing these things? Should we be doing these things? And one of the things that I often hear, especially CEOs who come back from a good church service, will come back and say, Larry, CFO Larry, I feel God calling us to do this, right?
I love that
feel
line.
God calling us to do this. How is that poor CFO going to be able to say no? God has said to Geogy Thomas, God visited with Geogy Thomas on Sunday and said, you got to open this. And how that's so unfair to your team, right? It's so unfair to that person.
So the next session is how to say no.
right. That's another session. But so that's why we've had to develop these 5 different pillars that we're going to say we're going to run through these, and we're going to vet. We're going to vet these discussions, and to have it in a way that doesn't make it seem like you're less of a Christian, or you're less trusting in God, or you don't care about the community or whatever. That's why we've, through the years, had to develop this, because together we're amazing, but individually we have issues, right? Individually we are going to be focused on sometimes the wrong things, so we need that kind of help. So the first pillar I want to talk about is the mission, right? We want to support our mission. We need to provide care for the vulnerable and underinsured. We want to be a pillar for our community, right? That's the first pillar. If it doesn't connect with our mission, it shouldn't be happening, right? And so I've got I know we're talking about this fake community called
Yeah,
Wellspring.
yeah, it's Wellspring.
But honestly, a lot of what we're going to share actually happened, or actually was considered.
Is this recorded?
Right, I know. It's Geogy's Follies. I mean, we could just name this whole show Geogy's Follies, right? So I'll tell you, we had a situation a couple years ago where we had one of our providers, our women's health providers, come back and say, we need to start offering Botox. We need to start offering aesthetics in our system. And the more I talked to her, she was passionate, she was a believer, and everything. And the more I talked to her, it started sounding more and more right. And guess what? There were other FQHCs, not Christian, but they were doing women's health, but offering aesthetic care and pumping Botox for $500 cash to our patients, not our patients. But in that moment, starting to see numbers, starting to see how it could be justified, it could be something that we should consider doing. We started thinking, I've got a clinician that's actually trained to do it. I've got people who, this is a female provider that's saying we can make it work financially. Gosh, it's gonna look good for Larry, I think. We should do it. And the more and more and more I started thinking about it, I'm like, yeah, we gotta do this. We gotta do this. This sounds right. And if you're doing this, if you're doing Botox, I don't want to seem like we're condescending. For us, it wasn't a good decision, but it was something that I was going down that rabbit trail on. It was something that I felt like, yeah, I can make this work. We can make this work, and financial will be good. It'll be good in our community. There's a market for it. Clearly, there's a market for it. And our patients who have nothing are spending this kind of money to do this, and I justified it by saying, I'd rather have them do it in our clinics. We can take care of them better, right? Until a few courageous, godly people took me aside and said, hell no. No, we are not going down that. Wake up already, you idiot.
That's how you say no to the God told me so.
Right. We are taking our vulnerable patients and messing them up on what beauty could be and we need to be offering more BHC, not more Botox. We need to be talking to them about what's appropriate for women. We need to be taking care of their emotional health as well, and not just pumping them up. And it was like me waking up from a trance. It was me waking up from a trance because at that point I recognized that I had violated the first pillar of mission. Somehow or another, I had gone down that rabbit trail and allowed myself to really sell that part of mission and justify it in a different way. And so pillar one, mission. Does it align with taking care and providing care for the vulnerable, protecting the vulnerable, advocating for the vulnerable, for the uninsured, and being a pillar for our community?
Very good. Yeah, mission should be your compass. That should be filtering all decisions through. So next is this idea, okay, theoretically we're checking the box of it does align with our mission. Is there a need for this? So coming back to my dental example, clearly there's a lot of need for dental services. We had booked out 6 months within 3 weeks. Kind of this idea of, shoot, we could open it 24/7 and probably fill this thing up, right? Well, there's need, and then there's also want, right? Understanding need and want go together in this when evaluating decisions, because although the need, nobody really wanted to come to the dentist after 5 o'clock p.m. And they certainly didn't want to show up on Saturday morning to go see the dentist. And when I thought about it, that made a lot of sense. I'm like, I would never go to the dentist at that time. Why would anybody else go to the dentist at that time? So when you're evaluating decisions and thinking about who you're trying to serve, the needs that you're trying to fill, consider also the want side of that, or else it's not really going to fit a need. Sustainable. So this is where I get to put the CFO hat on and talk about the financial implications of this. As leaders, we have a responsibility to ensure that we are protecting the longevity of the mission. Like, if we make decisions that are short-term focused, yeah, it might be mission-oriented. It might fit a need, but if it jeopardizes the whole mission in the next 5 to 10 years, probably not a good idea. So doing the hard work to evaluate, yeah, is this actually going to work? And for us, the example we used for this one was physical therapy. Like initially, we were like, yeah, we got to do this. And I'll repeat the caveat. If you're doing these things, it's just really to serve as framework to talk through it. When we start doing the math, the number of referrals that we actually have, it didn't make sense for us to do that. Even though we know there's a need, it totally fits our mission, but if it was going to potentially jeopardize the rest of the mission, we can't really check that box. Unless, because you could say sustainable, safe, like self-sustaining, does every service line need to be self-sustaining? No. Like as a nonprofit, there are things that we know we're going to lose money on. And then there's things that we know we will make money on to support that. But you can only delegate or designate those dollars once. You can't say 340B pays for that, 340B pays for that, 340B pays for that. And then it magically is like, okay, we've already allocated those dollars, right? So when evaluating decisions, do not put the mission at risk for the sake of fitting a need that's mission-based.
So before we continue on the pillars, I wanted to take a pause and say these are, so this is actually a mantra that Larry and I came up with when we started doing this together. We wanted to be the clinic of choice. We want to also be the provider, the employer of choice. And so where that came from is really for the first 20 years of my career, I was in the patient room taking care of that patient, and I wanted that patient to have the best experience possible. I wanted to be the provider of choice. When people think of, when people have a cold, I want them to call Dayspring. I want Dayspring to be provider of choice. Whether it's behavioral health, if they're struggling with depression, their family's struggling with suicide, I want them to think Dayspring. When they have dental issues, I want them to think Dayspring. And so clinic of choice, that is a slam dunk. But then as I got more into the business part of it, I recognized that for us to be the clinic of choice, we have to be the provider, or the employer of choice in our communities. That's when the magic starts to happen. When patients feel like they're cared for, it's usually when their staff that's caring for them feel like they are cared for. And so, yeah, before, the whole clinic of choice is built on the idea that our community can rely on us for high quality, compassionate, holistic care that's convenient and patient-centered, right? And we wanted so much to do just that for our patients. But then the second part of that, we wanted to be the employer of choice, where staff are valued and cherished, part of something bigger than themselves, where staff receive a competitive salary and a strong benefit, and a staff that enjoy a culture of peace. So when we have that going on, that's where the magic happens. That's when you start empowering your staff to do great things. And so that you are no longer the Geogy Larry show. We are Dayspring. And more than that, we are part of a greater kingdom work that the Lord is using in our community. And so this is the framework for the next couple pillars that we're going to be talking about. But it really comes down to this. We needed to be the clinic of choice and the employer of choice. So pillar number 4 is we wanted to make sure that we are speaking in to the passion of the team. We needed to speak into the passion of that team. So what that means, I'm sorry, what just happened here? So we want to be fueled. We want to be fueled by the passion of our staff. We want to be the employer of choice by making sure that we get people who love what they're doing, who understand the chess piece that they are in the whole game, right? We want people to know that they're valued, that their giftings are valued. So if you've got providers that are saying, gosh, I wish I could do this, our hope is we're going to try and do that. And that's kind of where I went into that rabbit hole with that original provider who said, I want to do Botox. Because in my heart of hearts, I want them to feel like they can be utilized, that all their skill sets could be utilized. But I definitely had to run the rest of the pillars as well. So for me, one of the things, and this is actually a success story. This is a success story. About 5 years ago, I remember we had a provider who said, Geogy, hepatitis C, we need to be doing hepatitis C. And I'm like, Hep C is so painful. And this is before it was less painful. But at that time, it was really painful. And you needed a specialist at that time. And the treatments weren't really encouraging. And the treatments were very, very expensive and very hard for patients. And there's a lot of patients that gave up on Hep C treatment. But this provider, who happened to be a PA, said, no, Geogy, it's wake up, read up to date. It's up to date. I mean, we can do it. Family docs can do this. Primary care can do Hep C care, and we should be doing it. And that's what we, in our community who struggles with substance use, was now seeing the next tsunami of Hep C. And we need to be doing this. And I said, okay, Sarah, I don't know. I'm not ready for it. And actually, this is 2 years before the COVID outbreak. But I'm like, oh, okay, let's look into it. And she started looking into it. She started getting courses on it. She started connecting with the local PCAs and doing some great work. And the more she got excited about it, she started sharing, and the rest of the providers started getting excited about it. So much so that we started applying for different grants to get a fiber scanner, which is about $80,000. And we got it. And so many cool things started happening. And now we are a hepatitis C center in that area, all because a provider said we need to be doing something more. And we were able to say, let's empower them to be the employer of choice, to say, I'm at a place where the leadership will listen to me and equip me and empower me to do the things that I really feel like God is calling us to do. And so I mean, we couldn't be more happy and excited. We actually had the commissioners of health from Kentucky and Tennessee come to our grand opening of our Hep C program. And that was all because we said we're going to listen to our staff and give them a voice in this place.
So that's it. When you think about the employer choice, clinical choice idea, that's the employer choice side of it, that working within the passions of your team, working in the giftings of their team, because you're giving them that opportunity to enjoy their job even more because they are seeing purpose and they're getting to unlock those giftings that they have. So then this is on the clinic of choice side. We could choose to be, we're going to be doing every possible service that could be provided, and we're going to do it because we believe we can do it awesome, better than everybody else in town, right? And I think we tend to think that way. Yeah, we can do that, and we can do that, and we can do that. But when we think about excellence, the idea that if you're really going to be the clinic of choice, that's because the patients deem that you do it really well. And if you're not, then you're not really the clinic of choice in that service or what you're trying to do. So it's forcing us to step back and say, can we do this and do it with excellence? And if we can't answer that question honestly as a yes, then we don't check that box. So coming back to the pharmacy example, for us, we recognize that there's a lot of opportunity in that, and there's a lot of need in that, and it's mission aligned. But do we have the resources to do it with excellence? Wellspring at this point does not have those resources. So then it's, okay, well, do we go get those resources so that we can do it with excellence? Is that distracting our focus? Because that's what this is all about. Like, each time you're adding things to the plate, your focus is getting spread out. So this has helped us evaluate, do we do this because we want to be the clinic of choice for these types of services? If we can't do it with excellence, we're going to have to park it. So again, the 5 pillars, the idea of, does it meet your mission? Whatever your mission is, and when you think about mission, it should be basically summarized as, how are you making the world a better place? How is your organization being a transformational effect where it is? Need. Need is not just need, it is also want. Sustainable. Do not put the mission at stake for something that sounds and is a good idea today. Passion of the team. Are you tapping into that of the team, or are you going to create passion? Or are you going to be saying, Larry Rector, you are going to do this, and you are going to be passionate about it? And they say, because it's in my job description, and my boss told me to do it, right? Like,
Larry Rector, are you going to do Botox?
yeah.
For us?
And I'm going to do it with excellence.
Right.
And then do you do it with excellence? So pausing here, and this, I've really enjoyed how interactive this has felt. If there was an idea that you're thinking of, and you would put it through these, would you want to talk about it? Well, I've really enjoyed this. I'm glad that you did as well. And seriously, if you have book recommendations, email them to me. I love that. Y'all have a good day.
Christian Community Health Fellowship exists to encourage, engage, and equip Christians to live out the gospel through healthcare among the poor and marginalized. If you enjoyed listening to CCHF Talk, make sure you follow, like, and share on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Deezer, or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. To learn more about Christian Community Health Fellowship, visit cchf.org and follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Join us next time for another episode of CCHF Talk.